Matthew 18, verses 1 through 4. I'll be reading from the New King James Version. Matthew 18, verses 1 through 4. At that time the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven."
Let me encourage you to open your Bibles to Mark chapter 10. That's where we're going to be getting our lesson this morning, is in Mark chapter 10. I tell you, as you start to study this passage, one of the important things to do is understand kind of the mindset that the disciples who are involved in this account, what their mindset is. What we're going to be talking about is greatness in the kingdom. And so when you think about that, and you think about the kingdom, and at least from their perspective, many times their perspective was wrong. They weren't thinking of a kingdom as a spiritual kingdom. They weren't thinking of the kingdom as you and I know of it today to be the church. They thought of it as an earthly, physical kingdom. You might remember that even after Jesus' death, after his burial and resurrection, and just right before he ascended back up to the Father, in Acts chapter 1 and verse 6, the apostles asked him, "Are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" Right? They understood the kingdom to be an earthly, physical kingdom, that Jesus was going to come as some type of warlord and establish his kingdom and conquer everybody else in the world and make Israel this great, powerful nation. Okay, so that's their mindset. And so as they approach Jesus in this situation, Mark chapter 10, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking about Jesus about to be some great, powerful, earthly king. And naturally, they had a very close relationship with Jesus. And as you think about that, and you think about what their desire might be, humans have this, I guess, natural inclination to want to be great. And what I mean by that is they want to be powerful. They want to be somebody. They want to be important. They want to be somebody who others know, and when others think about them, they hold them in a sense of reverence or respect because of who they are. Okay, and so that's kind of what's taking place. And so if you have your Bibles open to Mark chapter 10 and verse 35, I want you to notice what they say to Jesus. Mark 10, verse 35 says, "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him, saying, 'Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we want.'" You think about this. I mean, these are two brothers, and we know that there's the 12 apostles, and these two brothers kind of separated themselves from the other 10 and found Jesus. Apparently, we'll see in a moment, they're not too far away, but they kind of got Jesus by themselves, and they said, "Okay, here's what we want you. We want you to do for us whatever we want." I mean, just from the get-go, we know as this conversation starts, their motives aren't real good, right? That they approach Jesus as if Jesus' purpose is to do for them what they want. And I tell you, I look at that and I think, okay, well, they've been following Jesus for some time now. They have some idea of who Jesus is and what Jesus can do. And we look at that and we say, well, what a poor attitude. And yet I find it really, I really believe that many people approach Jesus that same way today. What can you do for me? If I'm going to be a follower of Jesus, then I have to know, what am I going to get out of it? What's in it for me? Right? And so we go around and many times that's our mindset. It's just, I guess it's that natural inclination just to think of self. I remember in our scripture reading in Matthew chapter 18 when the apostle said, who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom? And Jesus says, you have to become like these little children unless you humble yourself. See, humans have a hard time humbling themselves. We like to say, it's about me, right? It's all about me, and I'm thinking about me, and what can you do for me? But when it comes to following Christ, we have to think differently than that. And so it's interesting what Jesus answers them in verse 36. He says, what do you want me to do for you? What do you want? All right? You come to me and you tell me you want us to do whatever it is or you want me to do for you whatever it is you ask. What do you want? I thought about it. If I could take 20 minutes of complete silence, and I won't, but if I could take 20 minutes of complete silence and us all just think about that, what do we want? I'm assuming most, if not all of us in here, think of ourselves as followers of Jesus. Why? What are you hoping to get out of it? Why do you follow him? Why are you here? Why do you get up every Sunday morning and come here? For many of you, why will you be here tonight? Why will you be here on Wednesday night? Why is it that as you go throughout your week, you're following Christ? What do you want? And I think about it, and I think about that certainly for myself. I'm not just asking you. I ask myself, why am I living the way that I'm living? Why is it that I call myself a Christian? Why is it that I'm a follower of Christ? And I don't know that I can narrow it down to one answer. Certainly part of it, I guess, is a selfish. I want to be saved from my sins, right? That's certainly true. There's other things that I enjoy from following Christ. I enjoy the friendships that we have, and the fellowship that I have with the church. There's certainly, I guess, a selfish desire to a degree for it. I want something. I want to be saved, right? I think part of it is I want to follow truth. I really believe him to be king. And I don't feel like I should just reject it. But why are we doing it? I think that you'll find that there might be a number of reasons. Maybe some of those reasons are right, and maybe some of them are wrong. But ask yourself, what do you want? What do you want out of being a follower of Christ? What is it you're seeking for? And then think of those answers and think if those are right. Are you motivated for the right reasons to be a follower? And what we're going to find is these particular apostles, anyway, in this situation, didn't seem to have the right focus. They didn't seem to have the right attitude. They wanted to be important. Verse 37 says, they said to him, grant us that we may sit on your right hand and on your left hand in your glory. Now remember, they're approaching Jesus as if he's about to be this great king, this earthly, physical king. They're not thinking about him as a Lord who's about to be crucified and go be with the Father. They're not thinking about him as what we know him as, the one who died and was buried and was resurrected. They're not thinking in that way. They're thinking he's about to be somebody. He's about to be the king of the most powerful nation in this earth. He's about to take the kingdom of Israel, similar to the days of David and Solomon, who made this nation great, but even more powerful than that, because he is the Christ, he is the Messiah that we've waited for so long. He's about to be somebody like this world has never seen before, and I want to be there. I want you to set us two brothers, one on your right hand and one on your left. I want to be somebody. I want to be important. I want to be powerful. Christ will be the ruler, but I want to rule in a sense too. I want to have some authority to my name. I want to be able to tell somebody, you do this, and they do it. I want to be there with you. Keep reading. And Jesus would describe that they really did not understand the magnitude of what they were asking. And again, it's because they were thinking in a very physical sense. They were thinking of this earthly kingdom where they would be powerful and rulers and more powerful than anybody else. But this is what Jesus says, starting in verse 38. Jesus said to them, you do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink? And be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? They said to him, we're able. So Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink the cup that I drink, and with the baptism that I am baptized with, you will be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those to whom it is prepared. Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. You want to be important. You want to be somebody that people know. You don't get what comes along with being important in the kingdom that I'm established. You're thinking physical. You're thinking an important person in an earthly kingdom is going to be somebody who rules over others. He's going to be somebody who tells people what to do and they do it. Maybe you're thinking they're going to fan you with a big fan and feed you grapes, but you're thinking you want a life of ease and a life of power and a life of rulership, but you don't get it. You able to drink the cup that I drink? And it takes my mind back to Jesus' prayer in the garden right before his crucifixion, right before his suffering. His Father, if you can take this cup from me, what cup was he talking about? The cup of suffering. I think about Luke chapter 12 and verse 50, where Jesus says, I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how distressed I am until it is accomplished. Why was he distressed? It's because the baptism he was talking about was he was about to be completely immersed into suffering. Are you able to do that? See, you're thinking of, you want to be on my right hand, you want to be on my left, you think you want to be somebody great in this kingdom. Understand, if you're going to be great in this kingdom, it's not going to be easy. You're going to suffer for doing so. The kingdom that Christ came to establish is different than the other kingdoms of this world. And what's interesting, though, is that as Jesus is talking about this, and these two kind of got away from the other 10, and there they are with Jesus, and they're saying, okay, this is what we want, and we want you to make us sit on your right hand, on your left hand. But it's apparently at this time that the other 10 hear. Right? Verse 41 says, and when the 10 heard it, they began to be greatly displeased with James and John. All right, James and John took Jesus to the side and said, we want you to sit us on the right and on the left, and the other 10 are thinking, wait a second, no, you can't do that. We want to be there. Who are they? You can't lift them up. We want to be there. We want to be lifted up. And so you have these 12 that are in a sense arguing, in a sense like children. No, it's about me. Lift me up. Think of me. Not them, me. And so what Jesus will do from this point on is describe something very important. And that is the greatness in the kingdoms of men is different than greatness in the kingdom of God. See, they were thinking Jesus was about to establish an earthly kingdom. And if that was true, then those who sat on his right and on his left, those who were great within this physical kingdom, would probably be those who were more powerful, who had great rule, who had great authority over people, who could tell other people, you go do this for me, and expect them to do it. And if they don't do it, then they're going to be punished. All right, they could lord it over them, and they could be their masters, and they could have this great authority. But what Jesus says is this, in verse 42. Jesus called them to himself and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever desires to be first shall be slave of all. See, when we think of earthly kingdoms, when we think about those who are rulers in the kingdom, the great important people is people who have authority. It's people who are the masters. They tell you to go do something and you do it. And we think of servants as the lowly people, right? They're the people who are told what to do it and they go do it. The great people, the weak people. And Jesus, in a sense, told them, okay, take your thought process and flip it upside down. You want to know what greatness is about? I mean, you think of the kingdom of men, and he used the word Gentiles. The word Gentiles just kind of means nations. They're the different people. And he says, you think out and you look out at the world, and you see the great people in the world. And And they don't always treat real well the lowly people, or they lord it over them. I mean, they have the power, and you better do what they tell you to do, or else you're in big trouble. And they lord it over them. They exercise their authority over them. And they're always about what you can do for me, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this. You go when I tell you to go. You come when I tell you to come. You do this when I tell you to do it. And you look at the kingdoms of the world and the nations and all the great rulers and their people who expect others to do for them. And Jesus says, but if you want to be great, you be a servant. Greatness in the kingdom of God is so much different than greatness in the kingdoms of men. If you want to be great in the kingdom of God, if you want to follow Christ the King, and you think about that, I mean, that's what a kingdom is. A kingdom is people ruled by a king, and we have a king. You want to be great in his kingdom? You want to be a great follower of Christ? Don't think that that's going to mean that you're going to be the highest rank, right? If you think that you want to be great as a follower of Christ, don't think that means that all the other people of Christ will kind of hold you up and look at you and set you upon a pedestal and think of you as some great, mighty, wonderful, powerful person. If you want to be a great follower of Christ, then you look around and you be a servant. Someone hurt, someone needs help. What are you going to do? Are you going to expect everybody to just always think of you? And it's always going to be about you? And if people don't do for you what you think that they should do for you, then you're going to get mad and you're going to leave the church, or you're going to do this, and it's always about you? Or are you going to say, what can I do? You know, a little quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Kind of that idea, but much more important with the church. Don't ask, what can they do for me always? What's Christ going to do? What I get out of it? It's what can I do? How can I serve? I don't want to be the great name that everybody thinks. That's greatness in the kingdoms of men. That's not what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about loving people. And helping people, and taking care of people, and doing what I can for others. Now, this is the really, really neat part about this, is this is Christ, the King, speaking, right? And what he teaches is that this is even true for the King. I mean, you think about the kingdom of Christ, you think about what Christ did, and this is what he says in verse 45. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. So the king sits upon his throne, and you think of the kingdoms of men, and they sit upon their thrones. They expect everybody to do for them, and they're not of the people, they're above the people and all. And Christ says, no, this kingdom is different. The rulers are servants, and it's exemplified by the king himself, who did not come to this earth to sit on a throne and have everybody bow down and grovel at him and all those. He came and served man. He loved man so much that for man he was crucified. When this king could have called, we're told in Matthew, legions of angels to destroy the world and to set him free. So powerful he was that no man could physically outpower him. No nation of men could physically outpower him. But he, because of the great love that he had for you and me and mankind, died. I mean, now that's a rarity. I mean, you think about the kingdoms of men, and you think about the kings of this world, and how many do you know who are willing to take a bullet for a peasant? Not many. You think about the great, powerful people of this world. How many of them are willing to suffer for somebody else, somebody lower than them. And Jesus didn't take a bullet. He was crucified. And it was for the people who were lower than him. It was for his creation. He didn't come to be served, but he came to be a servant. Sometimes we think that if we want to be great, we have to have this great name. If we want to be great, then we have to be somebody that everybody else looks up to. And if we want to be great, then we have to have this ability to tell other people what to do, and they do it. We have to have this authority over everybody. And Jesus says, no, you're thinking like a man. Or you're thinking like the kingdoms of men. You're thinking like people who aren't humble. You have to be a servant if you want to be great within the kingdom of Christ. If you want to be a great follower of Jesus Christ, then you have to serve man, to be a servant. It's not about you and everybody else below you. It's about positioning yourself, in a sense, below everybody else and serving them. He flipped the way we think upside down and said, that's how it is if you want to be great in my kingdom. It's a great passage. And tonight we're going to talk about a similar passage. It's different. We're going to talk about a situation tonight where Jesus, all right, that servant, stoops down and washes the feet of his apostles. And it's a very similar teaching. But I find this teaching to be very important because, again, as just humans, we have this natural inclination to want to be great. And yet, what we think of as greatness is different than what Jesus teaches is greatness. And we need to take on that mindset. And tonight, I think you'll see the degree to which Jesus places the importance upon that. How important it is to take on that mindset and the great danger that takes place if we don't take on that mindset. If we hold the mindset of we are masters and others are our servants, it does great harm not only to self but to the church. But if we take on the mindset, as the greater I become, the more of a servant I become, that's when the church will prosper. That's when my soul will prosper, and that's when I'll help those around me. And so I would encourage you to be here tonight for that great teaching that Jesus will teach as we read John chapter 13 together. If there's anybody here this morning who's not yet a servant of Christ, they're not a follower of him. They haven't heard what he said maybe, and they want somebody to teach them what Jesus, the Christ, has to say. We would love to study with you. There might be some in here who have heard what Jesus the Christ has to say about salvation and what he wants you to do, and you're ready to submit to that, and you're ready to do what he's told you to do in order to be saved from your sins. We would love to help you obey that. If you need to be baptized this morning, if you need our prayers, if there's something we can do to help you get your life right with Christ this morning, we want to help you do that. If we can, won't you sit on one of the front rows while we stand and sing the song of invitation?